ShopGearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is sponsored by our store through Amazon. If you visit ShopGear.com, please remember to do that, because when you do, you provide gasoline to the engine known as Gear Radio Network, and that helps this podcast continue. It is the best way to shop for yourself, and is the best way to support this podcast. Now, on with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Better Live Than Dead podcast.
And here we are, episode 119 of the Better Live Than Dead podcast. This one is called the Sabercast, I think. Let me double check that one.
That's creative.
The Saberwrap. We always call it the Sabercast. It's a Saberwrap. Like if you could eat a saber, would you eat a sword? I don't think you can do that. That might hurt a little to do that.
Maybe
but
douse it in like sour cream or something. I don't know.
If you know what you could do? You could dip it in ranch. That really piss some people off.
Put it in the Lloyd taco, and that would make it really top notch.
I don't even want to talk about Lloyd taco right now because I'm so hungry. But hey, I'm also hungry. I'm Ryan Wolfe. I just dad joked myself there. I'm Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD, joined on the line by the recently ill, now healing Brayton Wilson at BJ Wilson WJR on Twitter. How you feeling, man? How's it going?
You know, I'm feeling much better than what I was last week, so that's at least a positive sign.
That's good, man. This illness has been gruesome. I've been lucky to kind of avoid it and just deal with, I feel crappy this day, I feel crappy that day, whatever, but I don't feel crappy for more than like 24 hours. So I've been real lucky. But
I'm just blaming Mother Nature at this point because
holy crap, yeah, this sucks, man. Like, let's move somewhere warm. We'll move somewhere warm. We'll have good hockey teams. We'll have dope weather. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
But hey, the Buffalo Sabres, crappy hockey team. The season's over. Thank God. Thank God that the hockey season's over because it has been tough. And you know what? The years the Sabres were tanking and trying to not win so hard, those weren't so bad because you kind of knew the goal. The goal this year was not to be this bad. I mean, the Sabres will start off on a high note. They did something that no other team has ever done in the history of hockey. They finished 31st. Congratulations. The Buffalo Sabres record was 25, 45, and 12, 62 points on the season. That's the third worst point total in an 82-game season in franchise history, the other two being 2013-14 when they had 52 points and 2014-2015 when they had 54 points. So also to sprinkle on top of that a little crap sauce, 11 home wins, worst ever in franchise history. So not only did they perform terribly, they performed even worse in front of the home fans, which just that makes Buffalo so much happier. So you know, it all sucks pretty bad here in Buffalo. But good news, lottery odds 18.5% for Rasmus Dahlin. Maybe they'll get him. But Brayton, on the surface, before we jump into the three big things, what are your thoughts overall on the Buffalo Sabres craptastic season that was?
I think craptastic is a really good way to put it. I'm just glad it's over. You know, like going in game one, we all thought, hey, we could play like this every game. This is going to be fun. And then game two, game three, game four, game five turns up, and it's the same stuff we've been experiencing for the past half dozen years. And boy, what a terrible showing it was. Thank goodness it's over. I'm at least willing to be optimistic and say that the future of the Sabres organization is going to look much brighter. I don't think it really can get much worse than this.
I mean,
but then again, we've said this before.
We have said this a couple times now, but you know what? Looking back at it, I remember I was actually it was my birthday. The home opener was my birthday, and I was seeing Against Me at the Town Ballroom, which was an incredible show. But you see Jason Pominville playing like he's 25 again, and you're like, oh man, and after October, you're thinking Pominville's going to score, 30 goals. The Sabres team's going to win, 50 games, whatever, come up with whatever conclusion you wanted to. We all knew regression was going to happen. And Jason Pominville, I don't know if you could say he just became kind of a shell of himself. And that's something we can talk about here shortly, but I want to jump in with the good news. The only good thing about this season, Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart, Totally leading the way. They combined. Buffalo scored 199 goals total this season. Jack and Sam combined for 50 of those goals. Fantastic news. But the thing, Brayton, I want to talk about first off is where did Sam Reinhart come from? I mean, his first 38 games from October to December, 5 goals. Terrible. Everyone was talking about trading him. Pennies on the dollar, fire sale, get rid of Sam Reinhart if you can for whatever you can get for him. The Buffalo Sabres obviously had no interest in doing that. And then the final 44 games, not only does he score 20 goals, he scores 44 points or 40 points in 44 games from January to April. Now, he is a pending restricted free agent. So the question I have for you, I want to pick your brain on this one. Is this offensive outburst money motivated, or are we seeing actual development from Sam Reinhart? And is this something that we can, next season pencil him in for 20 plus goals on the second line with no problem?
No, I think that this wasn't really motivated. I don't think this was because it's a contract year like we've seen in the past with Drew Stafford. I think this is just Sam Reinhart finally looking like an adult and finally playing like an NHLer. I mean, we had that good stint right off the bat when he came in with Jack, and both of them kind of brightened up our worlds. And then the next season was kind of a step back for Sam, although he produced more points. Everybody said, yeah, well, he didn't score as much. He wasn't getting in the dirty areas. And that play really continued over right into the beginning of the season, and it didn't really strike for him until it was the new year, the Winter Classic game. He played really well that game, and from there, he turned it on. He actually looked like he belonged in the NHL. He was keeping up with guys like a Jack Eichel when he was playing with them. He was playing as fast as an NHLer, even though he's still not the fastest of a skater, able to keep up with the play. He's able to continue to make plays on offense while being responsible in his own end. And, it really showed in the last 44 games with the 40 points being nearly a point per game producer in that time. I think that, I think that things are coming around for Sam Reinhart. I think he certainly has to stay on the wing. He can't play center anymore. There's no more finagling with that. I think Phil Housley has recognized that, which is good. So come next season, hopefully he'll be playing on a line with someone decent, whether that's Eichel or even Casey Middlestat. That would be probably ideal for him. And if he does that and he gets a new contract and he's happy with everything here, hopefully he can continue his production, because, there were a lot of good things to see from him. He was just making plays. He was getting shots through. He was putting himself in spots where he can get goals or make plays. And being the Sam Reinhart that we all thought he was going to be once he was drafted by Tim Murray, hard to believe now, nearly 4 years ago.
Yeah, looking at Sam Reinhart, I was pleased with the development, but I was always kind of thinking it's as good as his second half was. I want to know why the first half sucked so bad, because that's what you need to know so you can build off of that. So he can be, a 70 or 80 point producer next season. Sam Reinhart developing, he's not been bad. It's just he's never really performed up to that second overall tag that everyone's had on him, obviously, since he got drafted second overall. So I certainly think that the step forward that he took is fantastic for the Buffalo Sabres, because they need more of that for sure. I think, too, this also gives you the opportunity. Now, I know you mentioned playing on a line with Jack, but I think this gives you the opportunity to put Jack on the top line, put Sam on the second line, and kind of separate some scoring and spread some scoring around. Because obviously, as we've seen, as we watch the NHL playoffs right now, it's not about your top line being real good. It's not about your second line being real good. It's about, having 3 to potentially even 4 lines that you can roll out there and you can score at any point in time. That's what it's all about. And that's what wins you hockey games. The Buffalo Sabres aren't doing enough of that. So, speaking of Jack, too, just something to point out real quick, because it kind of struck me. Jack scored 25 goals, a career high in 67 games this season, which ends up being 0.37 goals per game. Now, I did the quick math because I'm a mathematician over here. I'm the stats department over at BLTD, which is scary. An 82-game pace, 30.34 goals. So we could say, 30 or 31, whatever you want to say. But either way, Jack Eichel's going to score a ton of goals. He did score a ton of goals. And a healthy, motivated Jack Eichel next season, maybe we'll see even more coming out of that department, which would be real nice to see. I mean, to see him take an even further step in his development, because we saw this year he took a big step forward, not only off the ice, but on the ice and in the leadership role as well. Everything you wanted to see from Jack, you saw this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing we saw from Jack, which is very obvious, was his leadership. He took over a leadership role, and I mean, he certainly seems to be the slot in to fit in as captain next year. But obviously next year's next year. We're still a little ways away from that. But when healthy, I mean, Jack Eichel is certainly the best playmaker on the ice. He certainly makes all the right plays. He does all the right things. And, he's the guy that the Sabres are going to rely on for the next 15 years. And, Sabres are still lucky to have him, even though they've been mediocre for the past 3 years.
And again, the one thing for me with the leadership is that Jack went last year, and this explains to me in a nutshell, really what Jack did. Last year, he was blaming the media, being kind of pissy with everybody. And then this year he came out and said, I've learned to cultivate a relationship, because at the end of the day, you talk to the media more than you talk to your friends or family. You talk to the media every day. You need to have some sort of good relationship to keep that ball rolling forward. And smart man, he figured it out at a young age. So we'll see where that goes. But if Jack doesn't step on the ice in October with a C on his jersey, I'm not sure what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be one of those situations where you kind of question, okay, he doesn't have the C on. Is there something really else going on here, or are we missing something? I mean, it's got to be one. I don't know what it would be. I don't know what else to think it would be.
And that's definitely something we can talk about here in just a second. I want to jump over kind of an overview of the season really quick. Just obviously not the season. This is the second big thing here. Not the season the Sabres expected. Missed the playoffs again, which pushes their last playoff appearance to the 2010-2011 season. Now, this question here is our second big thing. Jason Botterill, Phil Housley will return. I know it probably comes off as a dumb question to most, including you, Brayton, and myself. I felt stupid writing it, but are you surprised that they're coming back, or is this just a no-brainer?
I think it's a no-brainer. For Jason Botterill, obviously, yes. He's gotten 1 year. You can even throw Phil Housley in this. They've both gotten 1 year to evaluate what they have here. Not only that, but to evaluate what they have in Rochester and throughout the entire system. I think that Jason Botterill, he understands he's got a lot of work to do. He's got a lot of work to do this offseason to really mold this team into what he wants it to be, which is a team that's strong from top to bottom, from the NHL to the AHL. And he also wants a team that is fast, that has a lot of skill, that can, play both ends of the ice really well, and that can play smart with the puck, and that can move the puck really well. And let's just say this team, they had some speed, but not enough. They really couldn't move the puck at all. They were terrible at culminating plays, unless it was guys from, Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart occasionally, a couple of other players. But, I mean, this team really was bad at making some really quality plays, moving the puck, playing with speed. And in their defensive zone, they were awful. Goaltending was really shoddy at points this season. So Botterill knows there's going to be a lot of work to do within the organization and within the depth. And he's already doing a couple of nice things to replenish with bringing in a couple of, signings, college free agents. He's probably going to bring in a couple of the prospects that are going to be hopefully ready to go to join Rochester at least next year. And, I mean, for Phil Housley, he kind of got a feeling of what to expect from this team, who he's got to really work with, who, he can rely on a little bit more. And I think he's finally realizing, okay, if we're going to work my system, my way, the way that I think can work in this league, he knows these players can't do it. These players can do it. These players have the potential to do it, but they need a lot of work. So it needed that full year to really understand what is needed with this team. And, while we pulled our hair out with the whole, well, why aren't you playing this player over this player? Or, why'd you make this decision instead of doing, what could have won you hockey games? It's just a rookie head coach trying to learn the ropes. And, If he makes the same mistakes next year, then maybe we can be a little more concerned. But, when you look at it at the end, I think it's all fine. I think it's all good. Both guys are safe. I think, especially Jason Bottrill, I think he's the most safe out of any of them. And we're going to move forward with Housley and Bottrill for next year and probably another year or two.
If nothing else, he needs to learn to keep Victor Antipin freed. If not, he will feel the wrath of the Buffalonians.
Yeah. And unfortunately, with a guy like Antipin, I think he should get another shot. I think he should get another look, but I just can't see a spot being open for him on this roster next year, which is really unfortunate because I think that he has a ton of potential and maybe he gets it with another team. But, I mean, if he comes to the NHL, gets what he's gotten, doesn't get another chance, and has to go back to the KHL, you got to really feel bad.
Yeah, he kind of got a raw deal, especially towards the end of the season when he got his face smashed in, and that's just, what a terrible way to end the season.
Right.
But hey, looking over the last big thing we have here today, and we'll kind of talk for a few minutes on this one, a core shakeup. We've heard Jason Bottrill talk about that certain players are necessarily not coachable, but stuck in their own ways. I mean, we've heard that a lot. Guys, they don't want to show up. They didn't show up to play tonight. They weren't ready to play tonight. Like, where does that come from? That's what the Buffalo Sabres need to figure out this offseason. Now, I think it's safe to say the core right now is Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, Ryan O'Reilly, Kyle Poso, and Rasmus Ristolainen. Those are the safe bets for that core. Now, when Bottrill says stuff like I mentioned, guys are necessarily not uncoachable, but they're stuck in their ways. Does a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen come to your mind there, or is it someone else who you're thinking of in that respect?
A guy like Rasmus Ristolainen is interesting. He's a player that plays with a lot of, I don't know what the right word would be here. I don't know if it's heart, but, I mean, he goes out there and plays with a purpose. He goes out there, he really wants to play a certain game, but, the past few years have been rough on him. I mean, he's been thrown in to a whole bunch of different situations. He's expected to be a minute muncher anywhere on the ice at any time. And I just don't think he's the type of player that can play 27, 28 minutes a night. He's not built. I mean, I wouldn't say he's built for that. I just think that he's not the type of player that I think is capable of that mentally, physically, what have you. I just think that, he's definitely a player that can be a top four defenseman. I mean, he's certainly capable of it, but he shouldn't be playing 28 minutes a night, 25 minutes a night, in some cases even 31, 32 minutes a night. He should be playing around 22, 23 minutes a night, still have the roles on the power play, maybe the second power play. He plays some penalty kill minutes, but, I mean, his role definitely needs to be diminished a little bit. But the problem is that there's not enough players on the blue line that were able to, step in when he needed it most. And that's been the case for the past few years, even under Dan Bilesma and even Ted Nolan. So, I think that Rasmus Ristolainen isn't coachable. I mean, he is coachable. I don't think that, that phrase of he's not coachable should be thrown on him. But he certainly is a guy that needs to improve his overall game because he does tend to make some questionable decisions in his own end. But then again, there's a lot of defensemen on this team that make some questionable decisions in their own end. So he's not alone. He definitely needs a lot of work to do. But, I mean, for people that want him traded or people that, would be open to moving him, you move him, that's a pretty big hole you're going to leave unless you're getting something pretty big in return, like another defenseman. I mean, maybe, but I'm definitely on board with keeping Rasmus Ristolainen for now. I think that his cap hit is not as horrible as, some mention. I don't think he's as bad of a defenseman as people say he is, especially the analytics group of people. But, I think that Rasmus Ristolainen should stay. I think he's definitely got an important role on this team. And as long as he continues to show improvement in his overall game, by all means, I'm here for him. I'll support him and, fill him in on a top four role on this team for the long term.
Now, looking kind of a little deeper down that rabbit hole, the other name that comes to mind is Ryan O'Reilly, and for multiple reasons. I mean, this is a guy who we've heard throughout his tenure, good or bad, good games or bad games, always beating up on himself, and understandably so. He's a very passionate guy. He talked about on Locker Cleanout Day, losing his love for the game at times, and I get that, because being a fan, I can imagine being a hockey player. Granted, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play a child's game. I get that, but that's like saying, go to your job every day and have it be crappy all the time and just getting crapped on every time you turn around. And then when you struggle, it makes it 10 times worse. I mean, we've all been there at some point in time. If you dumb it down and take out the, millions of dollars they're making, for playing a child's game, you kind of think about it and go, oh yeah, I can relate to that. So no hate on Ryan O'Reilly, but it brings up an interesting question. With Ryan O'Reilly certainly not stepping into that captain role, because I mean, when Ryan O'Reilly came to the Buffalo Sabres a few years ago, he was earmarked to be the captain, even with knowing Jack Eichel was coming in. You're saying O'Reilly's going to be the guy because he's got the experience of being a leader from Colorado. He can step in with his young team and be the guy. And I mean, he wore an A under Brian Giunta, so obviously he worked with that leadership. And we all know Brian Giunta, like him or not, he was a great leader, a great captain for the Montreal Canadiens, for the Buffalo Sabres, even though the Sabres were bad, obviously, but I digress. But O'Reilly just never developed into that captain. And now with Jack Eichel taking that role, most likely, do you think it's time to see what you can get for Ryan O'Reilly and maybe cut bait or try to turn, like, addition by subtraction, turn an asset into an asset, essentially?
I think it's certainly time to take a look out there, see what's open, because there were some talks at the deadline that there's a good chance that O'Reilly was getting some good consideration, and that there was a chance that the Sabres were shopping him, but no team could step up at the plate right at the time of the deadline to really make a considerable offer for Jason Botterill. But now that it's the off season and the draft is a big time for trades, I should say, that would be certainly the time to take a look at a possible Ryan O'Reilly deal. Now, are the Sabres actively going to try and get rid of him? I don't think that's the case. I think that Jason Botterill will certainly listen. He'll certainly get offers, and he'll probably get some considerable offers with the amount of respect that he has around the league. But I think that a guy like Ryan O'Reilly could be one of your most valuable assets that could get you a first-round pick in return, or can get you a top prospect or a valuable NHL-ready player. So if the Sabres get the right deal for Ryan O'Reilly, by all means, make the move and move on, because, that's a guy, you've got a $7.5 million cap hit to pay for him over the next 5 years. He has had concerns with his play and the way that he has the drive for the game. He always is one of those guys that's just like, I've got to be better on the ice. I've got to do more. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Well, if you say you got to do this and got to do that, why aren't you doing it? Why don't you go out on the ice and prove it night in, night out that you're working to be better? It was just kind of the same Ryan O'Reilly after a while that we saw. Nothing really progressed for him. And it's frustrating to see. It's unfortunate, though, because we want him to do well. We want him to play better. But, he just didn't step up. So, I mean, if the Sabres find a deal for Ryan O'Reilly, I'm not going to say, oh, you can't trade Ryan O'Reilly, because you also look at the center depth right now. Sure, it would be great to have Eichel, Middlestat, and O'Reilly as your top three centers next year, but you're not paying a guy like O'Reilly to be a third-line center. There's just no role for him like that on this team. He's a great face-off guy, but at the same time, the asking price you could get for him and the return might be more valuable. And if you see it that way, then why not make the deal?
I mean, it's one of those things too for me that I've kind of, I don't want to say blacked out, but I've tuned it out. I guess that's what I'm looking for. Where you don't realize when Ryan O'Reilly gets cold, he gets real cold, and when he gets hot, he gets real hot. And he's sat around, those 20 goal, 60-point seasons for the Sabres. But like you said, Brayton, he talks about making that next step, but never does. And you wonder what the problem is. or why he can't. Is it, is it a lack of commitment? Is it something, maybe if you take, because I necessarily don't think either. I think it was, I want to say it was Jeremy White who said it. I feel like I as I'm thinking back, and maybe Brayton, you can confirm this or deny this, but when they talked to Paul Hamilton about it originally, and Jeremy said, I just completely lost my train of thought there. Paul was talking about how he doesn't think that O'Reilly is the guy who if he put in more time and worked harder, then that's what it was. Jeremy said, maybe if you play him a little, second, third line, he could focus or take the pressure off of him. He could focus more on his game and be that 70, 80 point a season guy. And I really think that's the case, where if O'Reilly can still be your lead faceoff guy, but if you maybe play him a little less and take a little pressure off and give him a little bit of an easier matchup, he can go out there and dominate. But then again, that double-edged sword, because if you take pressure off him, you put pressure on somebody else. But again, with that being said, just a thought, because like you said, looking at and this is kind of a very quick prediction. I know we did this off the air before the podcast, but before drafting and before trades, just looking at the Sabres center depth right now, you're penciling in Eichel, O'Reilly, and Middlestat as your top three centers. And that's damn good. That's real damn good. I don't think that they want to rush Middlestat, but then again, with that being said, I don't think there's going to be room for him in Rochester, because he'll play his way onto this roster. If he goes down to Rochester, it won't be for long. Now, looking at that though, I'm thinking, because Oposo was another one. He beat up on himself, but then again, you can't blame him, because he had a life-threatening issue, or a life-threatening reaction to that medication that he took to help his concussion, and he didn't have an off season last year. So he said, I got to go out and get faster. I know what I need to do to get better. And if he can do that and he can come to camp looking good, I'm thinking you're putting Eichel, Oposo on that top line, and you're going to go out and find a left winger and fill in the blank there. So you'll have, to be announced or to be determined, Eichel, Oposo is your top line. And I'm thinking a guy like, you can probably go out and get, and I'm going to keep beating this drum until I put a damn hole in it, but go get Thomas Vanek. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, you drop him down the lineup, you give him an easier matchup, and you trade him at the deadline. I don't know, he can be had for relatively cheap, because, as I'm sitting here, full circle, breaking down the fourth wall, watching the Maple Leafs and Bruins play. And the one guy that pops to mind is James Van Riemsdyk. Would he be great to put next to Eichel? Absolutely. Are you paying that price? Hell no. So sometimes you may have to say, and not to mention too, are the Sabres ready to go out and make a splash like that to say, we're ready to make the playoffs? I don't think so. Again, get a guy like Thomas Vanek, put him next to Eichel and Oposo, and there you go. Because Eichel played well with Oposo and vice versa late in the season. Because Oposo, underrated, had a good season. He wasn't blowing he wasn't tearing the cover off the puck, I guess, for lack of better explanation, but he still had a very underrated season. So again, I'm comfortable with that in the top line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A guy like Vanek would certainly be a nice addition, a veteran addition, and a guy that would certainly help out on, anywhere on the ice for you as a left winger. He could be your top line left winger. He could be your second line left winger. He could be your third line left winger. I'm still so on the fence with Thomas Vanek and bringing him back, just because he definitely can fit what the Sabres want. But then again, he's not as fast as he was when he was here in Buffalo. He's half the player he was, I still think, here in Buffalo. But, again, having that veteran experience. Jason Botterill, I don't think he played. No, he didn't play with them. He couldn't have played with them. But, he understands what kind of player he is. And, I'd be okay with it for a one-year deal, obviously. But that's what I think Vanek's going to get for the rest of his career, is just a bunch of one-year deals.
Not to mention, the one thing I want to point out about Vanek before I forget, and sorry to cut you off, Brayton.
You're fine.
He's protected, very well protected. He still puts the puck in the net, still gets points. We've seen it, with Columbus. He's really excelled in Columbus, which is surprising under John Tortorella in that system. But the last I checked, his offensive zone starts are very protected. They very much know he doesn't play defense. Not even that he can't. At this point of his career, it's Thomas Vanek does not play defense. I remember in Buffalo, it was kind of like you'll get lucky a couple games a year, you'll get lucky and he'll play defense. But now it almost seems like looking at his zone starts and all that, it looks like it's a foregone conclusion. They say, you know what, we'll take the good with the bad. He's not playing defense. We'll start him in the offensive zone and all that. And you understand that. So I guess when you're a veteran like Vanek at this point, you can kind of get away with that stuff. But because I think about it, and the Sabres, and I'm gonna kind of jump around here a little and kind of patch this together. But looking down the left side, I mean, you've got a spot to be filled. You've got CJ Smith, who I don't think you're going to put him top line yet. If he plays well and he shows up, maybe you give him some time with Eichel, but I'm comfortable fitting him in on the second line. And then the third and fourth line left wing, I've got a mixture of Scott Wilson and Alex Nylander. Now, I put Nylander fourth just because we saw what happened the last few games where Nylander played with Middlestat. They got lost in their zone a little, so they switched it up. So that's kind of interchangeable. But I really like Scott Wilson, the Sabres bottom six. Like I said, center. I know Evan Rodriguez is playing wing, but he can play center as well. So I just did this as a convenience thing, putting Eichel, O'Reilly, Middlestat, Rodriguez. So that for me, that's kind of my left and center. I'm going to leave right wing open right now. We'll talk about that in a minute. But just running down your left and your center, what do you have right now?
I've actually got a lineup where I don't have Ryan O'Reilly in the lineup. I think there's a chance he does get traded. I think that he could get traded, and in this case, I'm going to say yes, he will get traded. I think Botterill has some suitors out there. I think he will make a deal if he feels it's right, if he feels it's best for the team. And, right now, I just don't think, I just don't know if he fits in to what Jason Botterill and Phil Housley wants to do here. I mean, he's a great center. He's a great face-off guy. He's a great guy in both ends. But at the same time, is he really going to be committed that much to really change his game? Because he says he needs to be better. He needs to be better. But are we really seeing it? And I think that's the biggest question for me. And I wonder if that's the biggest question for the Sabres too. Now, I don't have C.J. Smith penciled in right now. I think he's definitely. I mean, he played really well to start the year. He was the AHL All-Star MVP, and Jason Botterill has said that if he was healthy, he would have been here for the last part of the season. But I would love to see him here, but I want to see a little bit more from him, especially during development camp, training camp, and heading into the preseason. That would be great to see more of. But with the way that Alex Nylander has played over the last few months and heading into the playoffs for Rochester, I mean, the few games he played here, he looked pretty comfortable. He looked confident in his play. A couple of early game jitters in his first game with the Senators, but in the last probably 10 minutes or 50 minutes of that game, and then the other two games in Florida, I thought he looked really good. He looked really comfortable, and he was playing the puck really well. And I thought that he definitely deserves maybe a shot next year, and we'll see how he performs in the playoffs in the AHL, because in this past part of the stretch for the AHL, he's looked very, very good. I have Scott Wilson penciled in as my fourth line left winger. I think he's a perfect third, fourth line type of player, plays with speed. He's a good two-way kind of guy. But I have Nylander and Wilson as my only two left wingers right now. And then Eichel, Middlestat, and Rodriguez is my only centers.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I think like I said with Rodriguez, I know a lot of people kind of gave me some flack and said he plays the wing, and I understand that. But he seems like a very good flex guy who can adjust to anything. The thing I like about Evan Rodriguez so much is he can play on the fourth line one night and then play next to Eichel on the top line the next night, and you'll see no change in his game. That's what's so good for me about Evan Rodriguez. Now, the one thing I want to mention about Alex Nylander that you didn't point out, Brayton, but you kind of jumped on it a little, but I'm going to say this right now. Alex Nylander, the one thing he has over everybody else in this roster right now that we know of is that Jason Botterill absolutely loves Alex Nylander. He's very high on him. And that, right out the gate, that could give him a leg up on saying, hey, instead of playing Nylander in the fourth line, we'll put Nylander next to O'Reilly and Reinhart. We'll put them on the second line. We'll get whoever they middle stat in Nylander and Reinhart, maybe something like that. Just something to give him the best opportunity to learn and to grow and to move forward from there. Because obviously you're not gonna learn a lot playing on the fourth line every single night. But yeah, that's definitely something where he has that on everyone else, is that Jason Botterill is very high on him. But looking at the right wing, for me, very simple: Oposo, Reinhart, Pominville, Baptiste, 1 through 4. I think Oposo is still the number one guy, just because you want to split up Oposo and Reinhart, kind of give Reinhart his own line, Eichel his own line for now. Pominville, I mean, the Buffalo Sabres could buy Jason Pominville out and they would save $1.66 million with a buyout. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Pominville sticks around. Maybe you put him in a trade and kind of dump him somewhere else to someone who may need a veteran body. But clearly the start of his season was, I don't want to say a fluke, because definitely he was in the right situation, right position at the right time, as anybody who scores goals and gets points. But I certainly think that Pominville has seen better days. He's older. I mean, maybe you hope he retires, and I'm thinking he'll probably stick around for at least one more year, then reevaluate. But with Baptiste, for me, he was one of the bigger revelations this season, because there was Bailey, there was Baptiste. Who was going to take the opportunity to run with it? Justin Bailey struggled with injury again. He's really picked up as of late in Rochester. I think he finished with 10 goals this season, which is at one point surprising to even see, because he was just having a terrible time in Rochester scoring goals. But Nick Baptiste has found a role and accepted that role and relished the role and ran with it and really filled it out. And having a speed body like Nick Baptiste in the bottom six who can do what Nick Baptiste does, that could be huge.
Right. Yeah, I mean, looking at my right wingers right now, I want to see Sam Reinhart back with Jack Eichel. I think that both of those guys work best together, and would love to see them back somehow, some way. Find a left winger for them. I don't care if it's CJ Smith. I don't care if it's, through the draft, whether you get a top player or whatnot. That would be just fine by me. I mean, Oposo, obviously number 2. I have Pominville as my 3rd. And then, I agree that Nick Baptiste kind of took the bull by the horns heading into the last part of the season. I think both Bailey and Baptiste, with their play down the stretch of the season, have probably earned themselves another look in the organization, and they'll probably get offered qualifiers from Botterill as the season moves forward, or as the offseason moves forward, I should say. But, I'm looking forward to seeing those two play. I think Baptiste could definitely finally have the chance to make an opening night roster spot next year. But you know what? There's still plenty of good competition. Who knows? I mean, maybe Andrei Svechnikov gets drafted by the Sabres at number 2. He makes the opening night roster, which he really very well could, and he slots in next to Jack Eichel on the top line. Sam Reinhart moves to number 2. Kyle Oposo moves down to number 3. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen, just because the future is still so up in the air. But I mean, right now I'd have probably Nick Baptiste here, considering the amount of success that he had towards the end of the year, and the way that I think that Phil Housley really liked the way that he played towards the end.
Which definitely is why, like I said, when I did this, I was like, I fell down a rabbit hole really quick, because I said, well, they could trade O'Reilly, they could draft this guy, they could draft that guy, they could do this, they could do that, they could sign that, whatever, and you just get lost. So I just said, you know what? I'm just going to say the team today, who they have, where they're going, and we'll go from there. Now, I think real quick before we move over to defense and goaltending, I think Justin Bailey might be a guy to take some calls on, just to see what his value is to other teams. Maybe if you need a body to help push a trade down the road a little further, maybe that'll happen. I don't want to see him go. I still think there's a ton of talent there. He's just been kind of unlucky the past couple of years, but definitely if they don't trade him, definitely give us a good look at Justin Bailey in camp, go from there, and we'll see what happens. But looking at defense here really quick, I think, again, just judging by what we have on the board right now, Scandella Risto coming back as the 1, Antipin McCabe as the 2, and Gouli Nelson as 3. I know I penciled Gouli and Nelson as 3. They could be a 2 if you want to push them up. But Gouli and Nelson, I'm saying them there because Jason Botterill was talking about them together and just said, I want to see them play together more. So that's good enough for me. And then in goal, I have Ullmark as the one, and then the two, bring in a guy, maybe like a Grubauer or Carter Hutton or Jonathan Bernier, someone who can play 35 to 40 games while you ease in Linus Ullmark. I mean, obviously, if he does well, you play him more. If he does bad, you play him less, whatever. But someone who can, if necessary, can play a bigger role as a backup goaltender for sure.
Yeah, just don't trade a first-round pick for a goaltender again.
God, no.
Please. I think that's a valuable lesson learned for the Sabres moving forward. But looking at my defense, I think that, if the Sabres win the first overall pick, just, knock on wood that, something good happens for once. If they don't, though, Scandella Ristolainen, that would be my top pairing. I actually have Gouli and Nelson as my second pairing, and here's why. It's because I think that our third pairing, we could be looking at something like maybe McCabe, Will Borgen mix. I'm very high on Will Borgen just because his progression over the past few years from his time with St. Cloud State and playing with the World Juniors and playing at the Olympics, regardless that he didn't actually get any games at the Olympics. But, the way that he played throughout his college career and now transitioning to Rochester has been really impressive. From everything that I've heard from his, few games that he's gotten in Rochester so far, his transition has been very seamless. He looks like he's played in the AHL for a while. He looks like he belongs there. And, it would be something if he came to Buffalo, really made that transition seamless and kind of surprised everybody and took a roster spot. But, for guys like Jake McCabe, they're going to have to work because that injury certainly didn't help. It kind of sucks. But at the same time, now you've got some competition with you, and you better, step up your game, because if not, your roster spot's not so safe anymore. And for a guy like McCabe, who Phil Housley loves, obviously, because, he was his captain at the World Juniors where they won gold, Jake McCabe's spot is not so safe just because the young guys are coming up now. And he hasn't, he didn't stay healthy this year. He couldn't get into games. And when he was playing with other guys outside of Victor Antipin, he struggled mightily. The only guy he was playing really well with was Victor Antipin. And if Victor Antipin's not here next year, which I don't have him penciled in anywhere right here, and which is unfortunate again, then Jake McCabe better find something, or else, he could find himself on his way out. But, I think the defense, if Will Borgen can really show off what he's got here, because he's not going to score a lot of points. He's just a guy that's really solid in both ends of the ice. He skates well. He distributes the puck. He does everything that I think really Phil Housley would want to see in his system, where he moves the puck from point A to point B. He's smart in the offensive zone. He's smart in the defensive zone. He's reliable in the defensive zone. And in the offensive zone, he's more than aggressive to making a play, and he's certainly got an edge to his game. So I think Will Borgen, don't sleep on him. And then in goal, I have the same thing as you, where it's Ullmark and goalie B, where, hey, are you going to go trade for a goalie like Grubauer, or are you going to sign a guy like Carter Hutton, or are you going to sign another free agent goalie like Jonathan Bernier? It's certainly up in the air, but get a guy that can compete with Ullmark. I think Ullmark is going to be the starter next year. I think he is the future of the Sabres in net. Obviously, we've heard Jason Botterill be very high on him, but, I think the one thing that has always been a luxury for the Sabres, aside from maybe at some points this year, is the goaltending. And, if Ullmark can come in and certainly prove to be the guy, that Sabres should be set.
And I know we've run a little long on the podcast here, so I'm just going to touch on these two topics real fast before we wrap it up. First off, Matt Moulson. Hard to see him returning for his final year, but the team would save roughly $666,666 by keeping him. With Zach Bogosian as well, the team will save $4 million each of the next two seasons, or they would save $4 million for the next two seasons, but then would Bogosian, they would save $4 million for the next two seasons, but he would be on the cap for the next 4 years instead of the 2 years. The team would end up saving $4 million with the buyout, so they would save $8 million by buying him out, but then those last 2 years cost them 4 apiece. So they save 4, they save 8, they spend 4. That's how that would work out. So it's something where you think that they may buy out Bogosian, but then keeping him on the books for the next 4 years may not be so attractive. So again, that's another thing where I don't think he'll be around because he hasn't really shown the ability to stay healthy, to stay in the lineup, even when he's in the lineup. Like, I know this is another thing that Paul Hamilton pointed out. And hi, Paul, you blocked me on Twitter. Please unblock me on Twitter. But one thing he pointed out that it doesn't appear that there has been a stretch of time where Zach Bogosian has been a Buffalo Sabre and either he has been playing hurt or just hurt. Sorry, I don't know why I was going to say. He's played hurt or he's just been hurt. And that's been
or
the
he
story
hasn't
of
been
Zach
here
Bogosian.
for a full season.
Exactly. That's the Zach Bogosian story. Catch it on Lifetime channel here in a couple of weeks. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts. It's only April. We'll be here to talk about it. We're ready to go, or we're amped up about the hockey offseason because it's the best time of year because it's the only time we can really be excited about the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, and I mean for guys like Molson and Bogosian, Molson obviously I think his NHL career is over. He wasn't showing enough when he was here. He goes to the AHL and he dominates as he should because he is a step ahead of everybody else. But at the same time, when he was here and playing in the NHL, it was just not enough for him. He was too slow. He couldn't keep up, and he didn't produce. And as for a guy like Bogosian, I think Phil Housley likes what he offers, and I think that he would love to have him as part of the future. But at the same time, if the dude can't stay healthy, then what are you going to do? I mean, you can't. You just can't keep praying that he gets healthy at some point and can find a way to stay in the lineup because, stuff like that, it just doesn't happen all the time. If a guy can't stay healthy and he's injury prone, he's injury prone. That's just his history, and you just got to find a way to move on from that. And I think if the Sabres can, they will. And I think Zach Bogosian's future in Buffalo is very murky at this point.
And I know we can wrap it up here with this because I know you have dinner coming, and I'm going to go get dinner because I'm really hungry. So, hey, we want to thank you for tuning in to the extended Sabrewrap BLTD episode 119. I'm Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD. Brayton is at BJ Wilson WGR. The newly healthy Brayton is at Brayton Wilson BJ Wilson WGR. Somewhat healthy. You're on the mend. But we are better live than dead.
And you are not.
We will catch you sometime very soon. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Bye, guys.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.